Ere the bonny boat was worn into the mystic.
So again, welcome to the Mystic. Welcome to the Mystic. But what is the Mystic? Well, it is not Muslim prayers on Friday, nor is it Jewish prayers on Saturday or Christian prayers on Sunday. Here we believe the mystic is a catalyst, that through music and story, silence and dialogue, we can strengthen our attachment to hopes and dreams. In the mystic, we believe that diversity is a prerequisite for all creativity, which is why the green room at Crosstown Arts right here in the Crosstown Concourse is the perfect home. In the mystic, the world is far better served by our different beliefs than it ever could by rigid uniformity. And so even if this doesn't rock your gypsy soul, as the lyrics to the great song we're about to hear says, the goal of the mystic is not to feel better, but it's always about getting better at feeling. And so I ask and invite that each of us find the strength to open our hearts and treasure the differences that distinguish us. And may the music of compassion, kindness, spirit, and insight fill this hour.
And the Lord said to John, "Come forth, and you will receive eternal life." But John came fifth and won a toaster. You don't need a parachute to go skydiving. You need a parachute to go skydiving twice. Parallel lines have so much in common, it's a shame they'll never meet. And how does Moses make his coffee? He brews it. He brews it. My uncle named his dogs Timex and Rolex. They're his watchdogs. Did you hear about the guy whose left side was cut off? He's all right now. Which is faster, hot or cold? Hot, because you can catch cold. What do you call a pony with a sore throat? A little horse. No. Why was the math book sad? Because it had too many problems. Okay, so a man is talking to God, and he asks God, "How long is 1,000,000 years?" And God says, "To me, it's about a minute." And then the man goes, "Well, how much is $1,000,000? And again, God says, "To me, it's about a penny." And the man says to God, "May I have a penny?" And God says, "Wait a minute." So our topic tonight is humor, starting with ridiculously bad jokes that only a preacher could tell.
I think you've got a future in stand-up if this whole pastoring and doctoring thing doesn't work out.
All right, guys, so why in religion do we have to be so serious? I mean, why is that?
Oh, man. We're in a group, and there's a poem by Saint Teresa or one of the mystics.
Right.
And I think it goes, "Beloved, why are you so serious? Why are all the priests so serious? Is it that God hasn't tickled them yet?" Right? That we just haven't been tickled. All the pastors and priests and leaders and folks who are so serious about their religion, nothing has tickled them yet, and that's just sad. I don't know why we're so serious. I think there's something about the rightness that religion tries to convey, that if we just do it right and believe right and act right, we are good to go. And if that's the way that religion unfolds, then it doesn't leave all that much space for spontaneity and for laughter and for just living in the most mundane moments that can be some of the funniest. But I don't know about you, Scott. I think we might have spoken about this before. Some of the funniest things, though, happen in church. Some of the absolute funniest things happen in church. Like, I will never forget in youth group, we had done something to piss off the elders of the church. I don't know. We were young. We had done something. And so we got called into a meeting with the pastor and one of the elders of the church. And he was just tearing into us about something. And at one point he stopped and he took out his dentures and put them on the table and kept going. I can't tell you what he said, but all I know is that we all looked at each other. Are we being punked? Is this serious? But some of the funniest things, so while religion and folks who are religious can sometimes be a stick in the mud, some of the funniest things, if you do think about it, really do happen in church.
So a lot of y'all probably know Henry Turley, and this is years ago, but Frank McRae, who was a mentor to me, some of y'all hopefully remember Frank. His picture's on the upstanders wall outside the Civil Rights Museum. And anyway, Frank is preaching, and Henry's aunt, Martha, had the tongue of a sailor, no doubt about it, didn't actually agree with Frank and his politics. And so in the middle of Frank's sermon, Martha just screams out at the top of her voice in the service, "Frank, you are so full of," and then use the word. And Frank goes, "Martha, you are probably right." And
That's
just
a good
kept
preacher.
going. I mean,
Don't miss a
that's
beat.
how sermons should be, right?
Yeah.
So now that you're a new pastor downtown, does that happen to you often?
Well, I will tell you there's a little more humor in being a local church pastor than in being a hospital chaplain, which was my first 5 years. Although I want to tell you a little bit about some of the distinct humor in that. But your question of why are we so serious all the time, I think, we each do a slightly different element of ministry, but a lot of times our jobs are pretty sad. Yeah. I mean, you're taking care of people who are ill. You are meeting people, typically, you're fostering a sense of spiritual wellness in a community that's taking care of people who are ill and who are witnessing the disparities of the healthcare system here in Memphis. A lot of times when people invite clergy types into their lives, it's when something has gone wrong. Yeah. I don't usually have people say, like, come to my board game night. I would love that. So if y'all ever want to invite me over to a board game night, that would be great. But there's a lot of this work that is sad. But there's a part of me that thinks, if you are following sort of a calling as a person of faith, one of the central teachings, certainly of Christianity, but really of all major world religions, is that if you want to draw nearer to God, you go to where the sad things are. Yeah. You go to the marginalized, the poor, the infirm, the imprisoned. You go to those sad places to be closer to the divine. And that, not to say that God is absent in places of levity and joy and laughter, but that is where we know to go to find God, perhaps because that is where the presence of God is felt more acutely. So I guess it makes sense to me that we're serious a lot of the time because we're being drawn into those places as people who have followed this calling. But nobody will go to a church if a preacher never cracks a joke in the pulpit, right? Like if you're always just giving you've got to figure out how to use humor. You have to.
Yeah, I think it's not what you're talking about. There's a lot of religion and life that is sad and things can be hard, but you oftentimes overread it. It's like I saw this woman as a patient who, I look at her and I thought she's like 40 years old. And look, it says on the chart she's 66. And, I ask her, so how old are you? She goes, I'm 66. And I go, well, how does that happen? She goes, well, my children have kept me young. And I go, oh, really? How many children do you have? And she says, I have 16. And I go, well, I'd love to meet their father. And she goes, well, I had 8 by one husband and 8 by another, 11 girls, 5 boys. And I I go, well, so you've spent all your life taking care of kids. She goes, well, that and working in the fields. I picked cotton until the owner of the farm, bought a cotton picker, and that sort of set me out. And I go, well, God, your life must have been really hard. And she goes, no, my life has been wonderful. God has smiled on me at every turn. And we read into things that are not there sometimes. But
that's true.
And then I don't know about y'all. So if you want me to do your funeral, I promise you I'm going to make people laugh.
Yeah.
There is no way I'm not going to make people laugh. Harry Phillips was an important person in my life, and I got asked to do Harry's funeral. And I'd been around Harry for a lot during the end of his life. But I tell this story at his funeral, which is that, I'm a preacher, Harry's dying, I sort of come up to him and go, Harry, his wife's Weedy. And I go, Harry, do you want to talk about God? And there's just silence. And then Harry goes, I'm going to leave that to Weedy. But being able to tell that Harry would have wanted me to tell that at his funeral. So,
I mean, for those of you who don't know about clergy, and maybe it's just me, we have a really dark sense of humor. Really dark sense of humor, because we spend a whole bunch of time around death and dying. But I promise you, at least it's been my experience, some of the funniest places to be are at a funeral. I've had some of the most gut-busting laughs at a funeral.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite, it was like a 3-hour funeral. It was for a public official. It was one of my first funerals in Memphis. And I'm basically the stage boy among all the many clergy who are there. I'm the intern. I'm running back and forth, talking to the funeral director, making sure we're staying on track, walking folks to the bathroom and back. And I get back on stage, and there's a woman who has just gotten to the mic, and she says, yeah, I'm his third wife. I don't know where the other two are. But I just wanted to say it. And then it just drowned out because everyone was laughing. And there are just these moments that if you don't take seriously, if you take seriously the lived experience, which is what you're forced to do as a person of faith, particularly as a clergy person, that life and death are bound up and they're not things to be afraid of, right? In the PCUSA, we say in life and death, we belong to God. And it's okay that you can stand at that most sacred and that moment of deep pain, and you can see the fullness of life that unfolds there, that includes humor. There is so much richness. Mm-hmm. And if you've gone to funerals and you've never laughed, I feel like you've missed out. Mm-hmm. You've missed out. There's something funny about death. Let's just be honest about it. There's something funny there. It's okay to admit it.
But it's not easy to bring humor into a service that seriousness, because in our congregations, everybody thinks it's life and death, right? You're now a new pastor at a church that's been downtown for over 100 years.
So I will tell you that every funeral I have ever officiated has been for someone that I did not know. Because I was a hospital chaplain for years, divinity staff member for years, and then I did one probably 6 weeks ago as a new pastor, and it was the mother of a parishioner, and I had never met her before, but she died young, multiple sclerosis, and it was the most ridiculous experience because the funeral director was so old and so deaf and could not hear how loud he was talking in the back of the room. And they did the thing that I never think you should do, so take note, folks, where they had an open time for people to share memories, but didn't identify several people who they knew were going to share memories. So there was a long open period, and in the back of the room, you just hear this funeral director going, why isn't anybody going up there? Should I start the CD now? I mean, so loud during this very solemn moment. And I see the family even starting to like shift and giggle a little bit. And I'm like, this is going to be a great memory for them of this really hard day. And so there was function in that humor, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think for all of us in our own lives, we need to realize that, we can get so serious about stuff. I've mentioned Frank McRae before, but, Frank, he was dying and he was in the Methodist hospice, and it was clear that it wasn't going to be long. And another Methodist minister who Frank had really never gotten along with, I mean, like, not at all, for some compunction, he feels like he has to come visit Frank. So he comes to the Methodist hospice, and the staff don't know what to do, but Becky, his wife, is there, and they ask her, what should we do? And so Becky knows the situation and turns to Frank and says, Frank, what do you want me to do? And without hesitation, Frank says, tell him I've already died. I want to be able to say something like that. When
Oh, that's definitely goals. Right?
Yeah. All right.
But the thing that I think makes humor on a base level is that it all appeals to some sort of common experience, right? And that's part of what helps humor to live, is that it reminds us of our common humanity. We've all had to deal with death. We've all had to deal with someone that we don't like. We've all had to deal with carrying a story that felt too heavy to carry. We've all had an experience that allows us to lock on to that moment of humor that in some way leavens the life that we're living. And that's important, right? You can't have religion without that. You can't have faith without that. You've got to have something that taps into that common experience and then pulls you beyond it into our shared life together. And so I'm with Frank. I want to be able to tell us, I've died already. I don't want to see you.
I think this whole issue of faith, people think that it is about certainty, but faith by definition incorporates doubt.
Always.
Paul Tillich said, faith without doubt renders your faith idolatrous. And, only if you're worshiping an idol can you not have doubt. But, engaging humor through all that is a way to sort of reflect on the fact that we don't actually know all the answers. And
Absolutely.
The more you can laugh at yourself, the better that is, I think. But we struggle with that.
Yeah. And humor is always that counterpoint to grief, right? But when they can actually meet at the same time, that is the best stuff in life, when you can actually have a humorous moment in throes of grief. Really is.
Well, Susan, we got you here so you to sing. So
okay,
keep us
all
going.
right. Told you, baby, one more time, don't make me sit all alone and cry. It's over, I know, but I can't let go. I'm like a fish out of water, a cat in a tree. You don't even want to talk to me. It's over, I know it, but I can't let go. He won't take me back when I come around. He says that he's sorry, then he puts me out. I got a big chain around my neck. I'm broken down just like a train wreck. It's over, I know it, but I can't let go. Oh, you don't like to see me standing around, feel like I've been shot and I just didn't fall down. It's over, I know it, but I can't let go. Round every corner there is something that I see. Remind me how we used to be. It's over, I know it, yeah, but I can't let go. He won't won't take me back when I come around. He says that he's sorry, then he puts me out. I got a big chain around my neck, and I'm broken down just like a train wreck. It's over, I know it, but I can't let go. Turn off the trouble like you turn off a light. You went off and left me, it just ain't right. It's over, I know it, but I can't let go. Round every corner there is something that I see. Reminds me how we used to be. It's over, I know it, I can't let go. He won't take me back when I come around. He says that he's sorry, then he puts me out. I got a big chain around my neck, and I'm broken down just like a train wreck. It's over, I know it, but I can't let go. You see, it's over, yeah, I know it, I can't let go. It's over, yeah, I know it, 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 okay? But I can't let go. No, I can't let go. I won't let go.
Thank you, Susan. So it's over, but I can't let go. That's why I want to talk about politics.
Oh, Lord Jesus, have mercy.
Humor in politics, y'all. So, well, I
just
wrote
wanna take
something
the
for the
funny
Daily
right out the
Memphian
knife,
last
don't
week
you?
about we got 19 people running for mayor, and not a single one of them have said anything funny yet. So,
Tragic.
well, Susan, join in here. I mean,
It is, it's tragic. I mean, come on, there's some ridiculous crap in our city. It's like you have to take your life in your own hands. Are you either going to get shot driving or you're going to hit a pothole? you really don't know. So yeah, that's the issues I wish they would address, the crime and all
you were
that good stuff.
Susan only works at Inabita's on Monday and Wednesday these times because she doesn't want to work on Beale Street on the weekends.
Yeah, it kind of gets a little crazy down there, but I do find humor in it all the time, like trying to find parking.
All right. Speaking of parking, though, speaking of downtown, I'm a
Yeah.
downtowner. The most hilarious thing is there's a surface lot right in front of my parking lot, and I don't go out much on the weekends because I can just pull up a stool to my window, and the stuff that happens in that parking lot, coming off of Beale Street. I mean, folks dancing on top of cars, folks having arguments. I once saw a guy that was sitting in his car. Look, it had to be. I made the story up. It had to be a first date. But he was sitting in the car, they were blasting music. He got out, and I think he started rapping an original song to his date. She got out and went into the apartment building. I mean, it's just this while he was rapping. There's just entertainment to be found all over the city. So you're right,
Yes.
someone has to lean into the humor of it all.
Yep. And we had that experience this morning. I pulled up to the church, which is downtown, and there was a man yelling like a lot at the gentleman who's our sexton, who was standing outside monitoring the parking lot, and he said, "Get out of here!" And I said, "What's he doing? What's going on?" And he said, "He's drunk and he loves me." Apparently he like yells like, "You're so great! I'm so happy to see you today," and
I
is
need him in my life.
emphatic about it to the point where Michael, our sexton, has to eventually say, "Get out of here!" And I'm like, "Well, thank God he loves you and he's drunk, because I wouldn't want to know what the yelling would be like." And then Michael got a real kick out
Count
of
your
that. So
blessings.
yeah.
Well, I want to talk about the politics for a little bit because I really do think that, everything can't be just so I'm going to do this, this, and this without some understanding of the world we live in. And I mean, if you were running for mayor, Joshua, how would you
First
approach
and
that?
foremost, I got way more sense than to run for the mayor of Memphis.
But we need a strong mayor. There's no question about it. So
We do, but I think that, to your point, there's a missed opportunity to just lean into the innate humor of being in this city. Of one of the things that I learned to drive to come to Memphis. That's my claim to
Josh was
fame.
from Queens, New York, came to Memphis, had never been behind
The wheel of a car.
drivers. Had never
Took my
done it.
driver's road test on the 5th and packed up everything and drove down here on the 7th. And if you see a blue Impala speeding down the road, get out the way. But when I got my car, I thought Memphis just had a really strong auto market, because every time I got on the highway, I saw a car with drive-out tags. And I did not realize Memphis has such a strong auto market until I saw a car with drive-out tags that didn't have a front bumper. And I was just a bit confused as to how you can have a drive-out tag and not a front bumper. And I think just leaning into as mayor, yes, the problems are real. But there are people who are living in the problems who are still finding joy and happiness and humor to make sense of and survive the problems. And it's okay to lean into the fact that the problems are real, and there's just some funny stuff that happens in the midst of the problems. Let's speak into that. Let's not be ashamed of the fact that the problems also produce the reality of our lives that make us laugh every now and then, because sometimes you just have to laugh, right? In Genesis, right, when the angels show up to Abraham and Sarah is overhearing the fact that they're telling her and Abraham they're about to have a child in her old age, she laughs. Mm-hmm. And I've often thought that sometimes she wasn't laughing out of disrespect or scoff. She was laughing to keep from crying, right? Because that's a hard thing.
That's really profound for someone who doesn't have children.
But I can imagine you really want kids. That's the promise. I had hoped for this thing. We had hoped for this Memphis that would be. We had seen this potential for this city. And it's still possible, but so much keeps threatening it. And so she's hearing, I'm going to have a child, but everything within me says it's not possible. And so instead of crying and lamenting again how impossible this feels, I'm going to laugh a little bit at the situation, right? Yeah. There's a way to take seriously the problems we're facing and to find some laughter and some levity in it. And I'm waiting on somebody to crack a joke, because you're right, I haven't seen it yet.
I mean, you're totally right. I mean, y'all probably mostly heard me talk before about it. We have so many patients come to Church Health who truly have nothing. Yeah. And like the woman I mentioned before, I mean, I ask them how you're doing, and the answer invariably get is, I am fine and blessed. I mean, how do you have nothing in the ways of the world, and yet you still feel that you are fine and blessed? Well, I think the only way that can happen is if you have an abundance of spiritual capital. You may not have the resources as the world claims it, but you have spiritual capital. And I'm willing to bet in their families, every last one of these people are funny, and they've figured out how to engage the world in a way that the rest of us need to learn from.
Yeah. I want to go back to when you talked about clergy having a dark sense of humor. I don't think I've ever worked with people who have a darker sense of humor than when I worked on Vanderbilt's trauma ICU as a chaplain. So these are the people that are getting every gunshot, stabbing, fell off a building, car accident, the only level 1 trauma center in Middle Tennessee. And I am convinced that is the most spiritual group of people I've ever worked with, even though probably half of them would be like, I'm not a church person, chaplain lady, and we just became friends. But they were also the funniest group of people. It is not a humor that you could share outside of that circle, because people would think, how you have no soul. How are you laughing about these things? But they were I have to believe that they have so much laughter and joy in their life and have a gift in the ability to feel that and experience that in such profound ways that they're able to go back day after day and see the worst of the worst in terms of what humanity does to one another.
Yeah. I mean, I think of the stories or the rumors about Dr. King, and he's carrying the weight amongst other folks who are working alongside him, right? But he's carrying this weight of pushing the civil rights movement forward. And like there are these stories of him being a jokester,
And
right?
being pillow fights.
Pillow fights and just ragging on folks and joking on people. There's this opportunity to be a serious leader and to be fully human, right? And I think that, to your politics question, is the great concern is that the way that we speak politically in public tends to take all the humanity out of the way that politics ought to be functioning, right? And so where is the humanity within our politics? It might start by being a little funny every now and then.
Well, I mean, you mentioned King again. I mean, some of you may know that a few years ago, Church Health was able to invite Andrew Young to come back to Memphis. At this point, he had never been back to Memphis since that day on the balcony. And he didn't want to give a talk. He just wanted me to interview him. So I would ask him questions. And then I finally got the question that I had always wanted to know, which is like, that day on the balcony, I mean, why were y'all here? What were you trying to do? And his answer was sort of startling to me. I mean, what he said is, well, we were not here to change the world. You know, we did not have a political agenda as most people thought we were doing. We were young preachers. You got to remember, King was only 39 years old. You know, Andrew Young was younger than that. Yeah. You know, we were young preachers just trying to do what God had called us to do. And it wasn't always serious. You know, it was exactly what you were talking about, Joshua, and a way to engage the world because you have to do this for a long time. You know, it can't just be for the moment. If you were just so serious all the time, you can't sustain that. You know, like churches are incredibly good at starting things. Churches are terrible about sustaining things. And the only way you can sustain it is that if you can engage the work on a daily basis, and it has to be enjoyable. And I would say it has to be fun, and there has to be humor in there. So.
Yeah. There's an article circulating right now. You've probably oh Lord, yes. There is this article that's gone viral, we'll say.
In the clergy world.
In the clergy world, yes. Dorky people, yes.
Please tell us, because I don't know what you're talking about.
There is an article that a Presbyterian pastor wrote
that
about.
Would be Joshua. Go ahead. Both of y'all now, right?
Well, I'm not. I'm just hanging with them.
We're luring you in slowly.
About why he was leaving ministry, why he was leaving the pastorate. And he's at a very large, affluent church and lists sort of all the reasons, which are all the things that I think we've heard a million times. And I read it and I'm like, yeah, I know. Clergy burnout, we're expected to have 20 jobs in one. Yes, I've heard all of these things before. And you know what I thought about knowing that we were coming here talking about this? I said, that man does not have any friends. He does not have enough humor in his life for him to look at the 20 jobs he's supposed to be able to know how to do simultaneously and say, this is ridiculous. Yeah. And I'm not going to be able to do all of this today and crack a joke and move on. Yeah. Like, he doesn't have any friends. And I worry that so much of clergy burnout, which they say half of us leave in the first 5 years, is because we can't figure out how to be a serious pastor and a funny person with friends who has a good time and, cuts up with people. We can't do those things at the same time.
Well, so to that end, I mean, Barbara Brown Taylor, who I went to seminary with, and I don't know why, Joshua and I went to the same seminary. We didn't know each other there. I don't understand why. But anyway, so Barbara Brown Taylor, who is a wonderful writer and a fantastic preacher, but she wrote a book now 10 years ago or so called Leaving Church. Mm-hmm. And she talks about all the reasons that she left church. And y'all, the woman does not have a sense of humor. And I think that's part of what she couldn't find it in that. Whereas another person, I mean, we also went to seminary with, who has not sold a gazillion copies of books, but he wrote, Martin Copenhaver, a book called This Odd and Wondrous Calling.
Yeah.
And it's all about, it was a response to Barbara's leaving church, but it's why he stayed in church, and it's because it enriched him, and it was life-giving to him.
Yeah.
I mean, transformative things happen in church. Like when I was preaching a sermon right before I went off to college, I think. And this little old lady, kind of one of the church mothers, she was being pushed by her son in a wheelchair. And she said, "You going off to college?" I heard. I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "Well, be good, you hear?" And I was like, "Of course." And then she interrupted me. She said, "And if you can't be good, be careful." And then just rolled off. And I'm taking that to heart, that if I can't be good, I'll at least be careful.
Well, what if you can't be careful? Then
you just SOL. But I mean, the funniest things happen in church. I was preaching a couple months ago, and I remember I got up, and I actually felt particularly good about the sermon that morning. So I said, "Good morning," whereas my first time addressing the congregation. So after worship, I was shaking hands in the reception line, and one of the parishioners came up to me and said, two things. My attention span is 10 minutes longer than you went, so shorten it up. And secondly, this isn't Walmart or Target, lose the good morning. And walked away. And I was just shocked. So the pastor came up, I shared it with the pastor, he came up to me and we were talking about it, and he says, "Oh, she doesn't like anybody. You're fine, just don't worry about it." And there is something about the humor that happens in church, because whether it's church or temple or mosque, wherever it is we congregate, it's where we do life together, right? And though we come with all the masks and the great clothes and the constructed versions of ourselves that we want folks to see, at some point, those begin to fade away, and we are just doing life together. And I am convinced that life together is just hilarious. Mm-hmm. It really is. And there's got to be an opportunity to just live into that.
Yeah, I wish Michael was with us, because next Friday is Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and then the week after that is Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year for being Jewish, but the Day of Atonement. Mm-hmm. And it's a 24-hour time of literally being in temple all day long. And yet even in that setting where, it's a heavy burden, it can also have to be light. You can't just try to connect to God every minute of the day without realizing that God's laughing. And I think, Rosh Hashanah coming the week before as a new year is all about spreading honey. And, it's a Jewish thing on Rosh Hashanah to have honey, which is all about the sweetness of life and how to embrace that, which we all need to do.
Yeah, I think what I love about that sequencing, and what I think I love about humor in general terms, is that it reminds us of impermanence. That when you are sad, you will not be sad forever. Like a laugh will crack through at some point, like light breaking through darkness, right? And when you're laughing, this won't go on forever. Like you're just always reminded that the humor breaks up the normal, the ordinary, and the sad and painful. So it just reminds me that, things will not always be this way, whatever way that is right now.
And you've got to have a pretty small estimation of God to not think that God doesn't have a sense of humor. I think God thinks that we are hilarious, the best reality TV show
I hope so.
to ever air.
All right, a few more jokes, and then we're going to hear Susan. So how do you make holy water? You boil the hell out of it. So why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. So what happens when a strawberry gets run over crossing the street? Traffic jam. So a termite walks into a bar and says, "So is the bartender here?"
These are dad jokes.
Why was 6 afraid of 7? 7, 8, 9. Yeah, right. We'll go one more. Okay. If April showers bring May flowers, what do May flowers bring? Pilgrims. What do you call a hippie wife? Mississippi. Hippie wife. Mississippi. Yeah, right. Why did the student eat his homework? Because the teacher told him it was a piece of cake. I couldn't figure out why the baseball kept getting larger. Then it hit me. What do you call a boomerang that won't come back? A stick. Why don't you see elephants hiding in trees? Because they're really good at it. All right, Susan.
Well, all right. Well, all right. Okay. You win. I'm in love with you. All right. Okay. You win. Now tell me, what can I do? I would do anything that you say. Just got to be that way. Well, all right. Okay. You win, I'm in love with you, all right. Okay. You win, now tell me, what can I do? I would do anything that you say. Just got to be that way. All that I am asking, all I want from you, for you to love me, honey, just like I love you, baby. Won't be that hard to do. Well, all right. Okay. You win, I'm in love with you. All right. Okay, you win. Now tell me, what can I do? I would do anything that you say. It just gotta be that way, yeah. Anything that you wanna do, long as it's me, baby, long as it's with you. Anything that you say, you know it's just got to be that way.
All right, I have our closing meditation today, and I think I went to this well at Christmas time, but I know that in this crowd, it is never too often to go back to the well that is Howard Thurman. So this is an excerpt from a meditation, Thank God for Humor, from Thurman's Meditations of the Heart. There is always in every human relationship and in every private life some place for humor, for the sparkle in the water of life. It is easy to understand the reason for so much of the tension that engulfs us. Sometimes we take our own lives so seriously that there is scarcely room on the planet for any other life. There is a sense in which our own problems loom so large that they dominate our entire horizon, and all there is for us to think and feel is that which is central to our particular burdens. If this be our mood, then there is no antidote quite like a central chuckle of the spirit. Humor may not be laughter. It may not even be a smile. It is primarily a point of view, an attitude toward experience, a tangent. True humor is a weapon, but it is used creatively when it is held firmly in the hands of a person who uses it against themselves and their own antics. All the gods of depression, gloom, and melancholy must shriek with alarm when there rings down the corridor the merry music of the humorous spirit. It means that fear is en route, that there is deep understanding of the process of life and an expansive faith which advises the spirit that because life is its own restraint, life can be trusted. What a deadly religion if it has no humor. What a dreary life where that precious venture has not emerged. Thank God for humor.
Amen.
So we'll be back the first Tuesday of October. Rabbi Greenstein will be back with us. It's October what?
3rd. Yeah.
October 3rd, right? And I can't thank Susan Marshall enough for being with us tonight. Susan.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
And we will ask you to take us out.
Okay. Sometimes I wonder if I'm ever gonna make it home again. It's so far and out of sight. I really need someone to talk to, and nobody else knows how to comfort me tonight. Snow is cold, rain is wet, and don't you know it chills my very soul right down through the marrow. I won't be happy until I see you alone again, until I'm home again and feeling right. Snow is cold and rain is wet, and don't you know it chills my very soul right down through the marrow. I won't be happy until I see you alone again, until I'm home again and feeling right. Yes, I wanna be home again and feeling right. I wanna be home again and feeling right.
Amen. We'll see you on October 3rd.